It was a peaceful day on the colony planet Virion 7. The sky was a soft orange, and 2 moons hung in the air like quiet watchers. Birds flew slowly, and children played in the park near the market. Sarah walked down the street carrying a bag of fresh fruits. She smiled at the vendor and waved at a neighbor. Life on the colony was calm, safe, or at least, that's what everyone believed. Her husband, Mark, was waiting for her at the other end of the street. He stood near their small house, talking to a friend. He looked relaxed, like any normal man, on a normal day. But deep inside, Mark was always alert. He had seen things, bad things, when he worked for Earth's Special Forces before settling here. He had promised never to fight again. But some promises are hard to keep. Suddenly the air changed. A tall alien with gray skin and sharp eyes walked into the market square. Its armor was black and had glowing red lines. People noticed him and moved out of the way. He was a Zarnok warrior, a race known for their strength, pride, and temper. No one expected trouble. The Zarnoks had signed peace agreements with humans years ago, but this one didn't look peaceful. The alien walked straight toward Sarah. She stopped and looked at him, confused. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. The alien didn't answer. His eyes narrowed. Then, without warning, he punched her. A loud crack filled the air as Sarah fell to the ground, her bag of fruit flying everywhere. People screamed. Someone called for help. The market square went silent. Mark saw everything. His eyes turned cold. The friendly smile on his face vanished. He didn't run to Sarah right away. He looked at the alien, straight into his eyes. Time slowed. His hands curled into fists. People rushed to Sarah's side. She was alive but in shock, holding her cheek. Her eyes searched for Mark. The alien looked around, proud of what he had done, like it was a test. He didn't know who Sarah really was. He didn't know her husband was human, and something far more dangerous. Mark walked forward, calm but powerful. His friend tried to stop him. "Don't," the friend said in a low voice. "That's a Zarnok warrior. He'll kill you." Mark didn't stop. His steps were steady. The alien turned and saw Mark coming. "You hit the wrong woman," Mark said, his voice cold as ice. The alien laughed. "She was in my way." Mark didn't answer. His eyes scanned the alien's armor, his stance, his breathing. All his training came back like a flood. The peaceful life, the quiet days, they were over now. People whispered, "That's her husband, and no, he can't fight him. He's just a human." But Mark wasn't just a human. He was trained for war. He was trained to win. The alien smiled again, raising his fists. "Do you want to fight me, human?" Mark stepped closer. "You touched my wife." For a moment, everything was still. Then the alien struck. Mark dodged. The punch missed by an inch. Mark didn't attack yet. He wanted to see more. Measure the alien's speed, his style. The alien attacked again, this time faster. Mark blocked with his arm, then took a step back. People gasped. No human should be able to move like that. Sarah, still on the ground, watched with wide eyes. Her husband, the quiet man who always brought her flowers and read books at night, was facing an alien warrior like a soldier. Who was he really? The alien stepped back, surprised. He hadn't expected the human to survive even the first hit. Mark raised his hands. "Not to fight yet, but to challenge." "You want to hurt people?" Mark said. "You picked the wrong planet." The alien's eyes narrowed. Something was coming. A real fight. A clash between 2 powers. One alien, one human. But the alien didn't know the truth yet. He didn't know what humans do when someone they love is hurt, and he didn't know what kind of man Mark really was. Not yet. But he would, soon. Mark stood still. People around him were whispering, staring. The strange creature had stepped back, watching Mark with curious eyes. It hadn't expected someone to stand up to it, especially not a human. Sarah sat on the ground, holding her cheek. Her eyes never left her husband. This was a side of him she had never seen before. Quiet, calm, and controlled, but also powerful. almost like he had done this before. The market was silent. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the moment before a storm. Mark slowly walked toward Sarah and helped her up. His hands were gentle, but his eyes remained focused on the creature. He spoke softly to his wife. "Are you all right?" She nodded, confused, still trying to understand what had just happened. The creature tilted its head. It wasn't used to this. Humans usually avoided confrontation. They were peaceful builders and traders, not defenders. But this human, he was different. Mark turned to the others in the market. "Take Sarah home," he said. "I'll handle this." A few people nodded, unsure of what handle meant but too afraid to question it. As Sarah was helped away, she looked back at Mark. She wanted to say something, ask him who he really was, but the words didn't come. She saw something in his face, something quiet and heavy, like he was carrying a part of himself he had tried to forget. Mark stood alone now. The creature still hadn't left. It was waiting, watching, maybe testing. But Mark didn't move. Instead, memories came rushing back. Years ago, Mark had been part of something bigger, a group trained to protect human colonies in deep space. He had gone through trials, traveled to dangerous places, met creatures no one had ever heard of. He had seen how cruel the galaxy could be. He had also seen how strong humans could become. But when he met Sarah, he chose to leave it all behind. He wanted a quiet life, a family, peace, and for many years he had that. Until now. Now, his past was knocking again. Or maybe, it had never really left. The creature took one slow step forward. Its eyes were still sharp, but not aggressive. It seemed more curious than angry. Mark spoke, his voice steady. "You tested someone who did nothing to you. Why?" The creature didn't respond with words. Its species didn't talk much. They believed actions spoke louder, but Mark knew how to read body language. And this one was showing signs of interest, even respect. Perhaps it had expected fear and received calm strength instead. That in itself was a message. A few guards arrived at the edge of the market, unsure of what to do. They had heard the reports. They saw the creature. But they also saw Mark, and something about his presence made them hesitate. One guard whispered, "Is he military?" "No one knows," the other replied. "He runs a bakery with his wife." Back at the house, Sarah sat by the window holding a warm cloth to her face. She stared at the sky, worried. She had always known Mark had secrets. He never talked about his life before they met. But now those secrets were stepping into the light, and she wasn't sure what that meant for them. Mark walked away from the market, leaving the creature behind. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't finished either. That night, he opened a hidden box under the floor of their small home. Inside was an old jacket with faded patches, a device with blinking lights, and a photo of a younger Mark standing with a group of humans, each one looking strong, ready, and serious. He stared at the photo for a long time. He didn't want to go back to that life. But if trouble was coming to this colony, he would not run from it either. Mark stood up and looked out the window at the stars. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. Sometimes it kicks the door open. It was early morning on Viren 7. The orange sky was quiet and a soft wind moved through the trees. Birds chirped gently, unaware of the tension that had settled over the colony. Mark hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of the small wooden deck, behind his house, staring at the stars that were slowly fading into the daylight. His hands rested on his knees, still and thoughtful. The world looked the same, but something had changed, and Mark could feel it in his bones. Inside the house, Sarah moved quietly. She didn't ask questions yet. She knew her husband was thinking, planning, remembering. She had seen the way he had looked at the alien, calm on the outside, but with deep understanding. Not fear, not confusion, something else. She brought him a cup of tea and sat beside him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she said, "You knew what you were doing yesterday. That wasn't just instinct." Mark took the cup from her, held it for a moment, then nodded slowly. "There's something I never told you," he said. "Back before we met, I was part of a team. We were sent to new colonies, especially the ones close to alien borders. We weren't soldiers exactly, but we were trained for situations." Sarah listened, eyes wide. "We helped people when problems started," he continued. "Sometimes it was peaceful, sometimes not. But I left that life. I wanted something normal, something real." She looked down. "And now it's following you again." Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. The colony wasn't under attack. Not yet. But the aliens' action wasn't random. It had a reason. Mark had seen behavior like that before, in places where trouble always came soon after, the kind of trouble no one wanted to believe was coming. Later that day, Mark walked into the town center. People noticed him. They moved aside, nodding politely, whispering behind his back. That's the man who stood up to it. He didn't even look scared. He knew how to move. That wasn't normal. Mark didn't care about the whispers. He wasn't looking for praise or attention. He was looking for answers. He went to the colony's small record center. The assistant behind the counter looked surprised to see him. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I want to see the visitor logs," Mark replied. "From the last 2 weeks." She hesitated. "Are you with security?" Mark paused, then gave a soft smile. "I used to be something like that." She handed him a tablet. "Be careful. We don't want to cause panic." He nodded. Mark searched the logs quickly. Dozens of names appeared: visitors, traders, travelers. But then he found one entry that stood out. No name, just a symbol, and a note. "Diplomatic observer, Zarnok Fleet." Mark's face became serious. The Zarnok creature wasn't just a random traveler. It was here officially. And that meant the situation was more complicated than it looked. He left the center and made his way to the old storage building near the edge of town. Years ago, this place was used by visiting Earth teams. Now it was empty, forgotten. But Mark had a key. He opened the doors and stepped inside. Dust filled the air. Old crates, tools, and equipment lay scattered. He found what he was looking for, in a box marked "Emergency Use Only." Inside was a small device, a communicator. It still worked. Mark turned it on and sent a short message. "Colony Virion 7, possible early-stage test requesting eyes in orbit." He didn't know if anyone would hear it, but if this was the beginning of something bigger, he needed to be ready. Back at the town center, the Zarnok creature stood silently near the fountain. Its eyes scanned the area as if waiting for something, or someone. Children stayed away. Even the birds didn't land nearby. It wasn't just visiting. It was watching, studying, and Mark knew what that meant. This wasn't the end of the problem. It was only the beginning. Night returned to Virion 7, but sleep did not come easily. The colony lights flickered gently in the quiet darkness. Families were indoors, windows locked, voices low. The peaceful colony had changed. A silence had spread, thick and heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Mark stood outside, watching the sky. He had sent the message. Now all he could do was wait. Behind him, Sarah sat near the door, arms wrapped around herself. Her thoughts were loud, but she kept them inside. She could feel something coming, something bigger than just one visitor, one strange moment in the marketplace. Mark walked back into the house and looked at her. "We're not alone," he said softly. Her eyes lifted. "You mean the alien?" "No," he replied. "I mean something more." Mark picked up the tablet he had borrowed. From the record center, the symbol he had seen earlier, the one used in place of the alien's name, was bothering him. He had seen it once before, many years ago, on a distant moon during one of his early missions. Back then, a similar creature had visited a human outpost. 2 weeks later, the outpost was gone. No battles, no warning, just silence. He remembered the message left behind. Survey complete. And now that same symbol was here. Mark opened an old folder in the device, one buried deep in the records, untouched for years. Inside were files labeled observation teams, cultural testing, and phase protocols. He read carefully. The alien that came to Virion 7 wasn't just here to visit. It was here to test, to study humans, not just their bodies, but their behavior, their limits, their reactions. And Sarah? She had been part of the test. Mark's hands tightened around the device. Not from anger, but from the deep understanding that his quiet world was slipping away. Again. Outside, something moved near the old watchtower at the edge of the colony. Mark noticed it first. Just a shadow at first, then a flash of movement. Too fast. Too quiet. He didn't panic. Instead, he opened the small storage box he had hidden under their stairs. Inside was an old wristband, silver with blue lights. A scanner from his old life. Not a weapon, but a tool that could detect heat, movement, and signals nearby. He placed it on his wrist and tapped twice. A quiet hum filled the air. The device lit up with a single red dot. Someone, or something, was close. Sarah stepped beside him, watching. "What is that?" She whispered. "Something that shouldn't be near our home," Mark answered. "I need to check it out." "I'm coming with you." Mark paused. He looked at her. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "All right," he said. "Stay close." They moved quietly through the tall grass past the garden, toward the edge of the colony. The night was cool, and the air smelled like damp earth. Crickets chirped in the distance, but even they seemed unsure. Near the watchtower, they saw it. A small drone the size of a bird hovered just above the ground. Its surface shimmered like glass, and it made no sound. It was watching, recording. Mark stepped closer, slowly. He reached out and touched the side of the drone. The surface felt warm, alive, and then it reacted. The drone rose quickly and vanished into the sky, like a bird returning to its nest. But Mark had seen enough. He looked at Sarah. "It's not just one alien." Her eyes widened. "There are more? Maybe not here. But they're watching, studying, testing how we react, what we do when someone is hurt, how we protect each other." Sarah looked toward the sky, now filled with stars. "What do they want?" she asked. Mark was quiet for a moment. "I think," he said, "they want to see if we're ready, or if we're weak." They walked back to the house in silence. Mark took one last look at the sky where the drone had disappeared. This wasn't about one colony anymore. It was about what humans stood for. And Mark knew one thing for sure. They had been noticed. The next morning brought no peace. The sun rose, over Virion 7, but the light did not ease the feeling that had settled on the colony. People whispered more than they spoke. Shopkeepers opened their stores late. Children stayed indoors. Even the animals seemed to sense something different. Mark walked through the streets quietly, watching everything. The Zarnok creature was gone, vanished. No message. No trace. Nothing. But Mark knew better than to relax. He had seen this before. What came after such a test? A period of silence, a moment of calm. Not because the danger was gone, but because a decision was being made far away, somewhere in the stars. And that decision could change everything. He walked into the community hall, where the colony council was already gathered. Sarah had come with him. Her presence gave Mark strength, even though he could see the worry in her eyes. The head counselor, a man named Harlan, stood up when Mark entered. "We were hoping you'd come," Harlan said. "People are nervous, they want answers." Mark nodded. "Then I'll tell you the truth." The room grew quiet. Mark shared what he knew, about the alien being a scout, about the drone watching their home, about the test from years ago that ended in silence. He didn't use strong words, he didn't try to scare anyone, but he was honest, and that made the room feel even heavier. "So, what now?" one council member asked. Mark looked around. Now we prepare. Prepare for what? We don't know yet, but they're watching. And what we do next matters. The council talked for a while, unsure how to act. But one thing was clear. The colony could no longer pretend everything was normal. After the meeting, Mark and Sarah returned home. The scanner on Mark's wrist kept blinking slowly. It was still sensing signals. Nothing close, but something. In orbit. High above them. That afternoon, a sound broke the sky. A small shuttle, sleek, silver, and clearly not human, landed just outside the colony's borders. It made no loud noise, no grand display. It simply arrived and waited. Mark stood at the edge of the field, watching it. Sarah came beside him. "Is it them again?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe someone else." The shuttle door opened, but no one stepped out. Instead, a soft light beamed out from inside. A shape formed in the air, like a hologram, but clearer, more lifelike. It was a figure, tall and calm. Not the same alien from before. This one looked older, wiser. Its voice came not through sound, but through thought, clear and gentle in Mark's mind. "You are the one who stood still." Mark didn't respond, he waited. "We see you, we watched the moment, the reaction, the calm." The figure paused. "We must understand. Do all your kind respond this way?" Mark thought for a second, then answered aloud. "No, not all. But many would. If someone they love is hurt, they will stand, even if they are afraid." The figure's light shifted slightly. It was thinking. Processing. "Your answer is noted." Then the light faded. The shuttle rose without sound and disappeared into the sky. Sarah stared at the sky. "What just happened?" "I think," Mark said quietly. "That was the real test." Later that night, a message came through the communicator Mark had reactivated. It was a short signal, just a few words. "Survey acknowledged, human response recorded, phase pending." Mark didn't know what phase pending meant, but he did know one thing. They weren't alone anymore, and the galaxy now had its eyes on humanity. The stars over Virion 7 were brighter than usual. They shimmered with quiet energy, as if something far away had awakened. The night felt alive, not with fear, but with expectation. Something was coming, and this time everyone could feel it. Mark stood on the roof of his home, watching the sky. It had been 3 days since the shuttle appeared, 3 days since the strange figure asked its question. And now, silence again. But it didn't feel like before. This silence was different. It felt like the final moment just before a curtain lifts on something important. Something that could change everything. Sarah joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "You haven't said much today," she whispered. "I've been thinking," Mark replied, "about the words in the last message. Phase pending." He had replayed that phrase over and over in his mind. The alien race hadn't said what came next. They didn't threaten, they didn't warn. They simply paused, as if waiting for something else to happen. And tonight, Mark felt that moment had arrived. Suddenly, the sky shifted. Not loudly, not with noise or lights, just a quiet ripple, like a soft wave moving through space. Then, above the colony, a shape appeared. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even solid. It looked like a mirror floating in the sky, reflecting not the stars, but places, people, memories. Mark and Sarah stepped outside, along with hundreds of others. All across the colony, people stood in silence, watching the strange sight. And then, the voice returned, clear, calm, gentle. But this time, it spoke to everyone. "Your kind has been observed, watched not for strength of body, but for strength of choice." Images flickered in the sky. A child helping another up after a fall, a group of humans sharing food with stranded travelers, a rescue mission far from Earth, and finally, Mark, standing between his wife and the alien that had struck her. The voice continued, "Some among you answer with power, others with peace. But your greatest action is not in how you react, It is in Y. People looked at Mark now. Not with fear, not with confusion, but with new understanding. This colony has been our final study. The result has been noted. Mark took a step forward. And what happens now? He asked, loud enough for all to hear. The voice responded, now, your kind is recognized. The shimmering mirror faded. But before it vanished completely, a final message floated across the sky, written in glowing letters in both alien script and human language. Humanity is ready for first contact. Gasps filled the air. Children pointed. Elders smiled in quiet amazement. This wasn't just about Virion 7 anymore. This was about Earth, about every colony, about what it meant to be human in a galaxy filled with unknown species and ancient powers. The people of the colony slowly returned to their homes, changed, not just by the message, but by what they now knew. Humanity had passed a test no one even realized they were taking. Back inside, Sarah placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. You didn't just protect me, she said softly. You showed them something they'd never seen before. Mark smiled. I just did what anyone would do. She shook her head. No, you did what a human would do. And now the galaxy knows. That night. The stars looked closer than ever, and somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the visible sky, new paths were opening. Paths between worlds that were no longer strangers, because one man stood still, because one colony stood together, because humanity was finally seen.